Were you there? It's almost like one of those Japanese Zen koans. Were you there? It's like a riddle. A koan is a riddle, a spiritual puzzle, if you will, that is given to Zen Buddhists who are training to try to help them to see things differently, something to ponder, something that is sort of doesn't quite make sense, and they have to sort of go beyond the normal way of thinking in order to open up some new awareness. So it's almost like a koan. Were you there when all these things happened, when, as the song says, when the sun refused to shine, when they pierced him in the side, when they crucified our Lord, those questions. Of course, none of us were actually literally there when it happened, and yet the song over and over asks you, were you there? So it is a kind of a spiritual puzzle, and it's one I've been thinking about. And it reminded me of a story that I heard from a Unitarian Universalist minister, Carl Scoville, some years ago, about a Zen Buddhist monk coming over from Japan to America to have an extended stay at a Trappist Catholic monastery. And it was an experience where the abbot of the monastery thought this will be a great exchange and a wonderful way for the monks to learn a different understanding of meditation. And the Zen master came and he just found their devotion so beautiful and meaningful. And eventually, while there, said, I'd like to lead a retreat, and offered to do so. And a handful of the monks decided to do it with him. And the retreat began by giving each one a koan. Well, as the story goes, the first monk who went into the Zen master's room to receive his koan found the Zen master bowed down before two versions of the New Testament, one in English, one in Japanese. And he just sat and waited. And eventually the Zen master looked up and looked at him and said, I like Christianity. You can almost hear there's a but coming. But I don't think I'd like it without the resurrection, he said. And then he leaned close to the monk and he said, what is your resurrection? That is your koan, he said. What is your resurrection? And so I've been pondering this for this message today, thinking about it a lot, and I realized that we all bury some parts of ourselves through the course of growing up. We bury things that we love, that were meaningful to us, that gave us a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction. And at some point we say to ourselves, I'm too old for that, or now that I'm a parent, I can't do that anymore. Now that I have this career, my stature, I don't have time for it. We have lots of different things that cause us to begin to suppress or bury things from our lives that truly gave us life at different points throughout our life. So I think about this, and I think about people do this with their identity, with their sexuality, with all kinds of different aspects of themselves. I think of in my own journey, my father grew up Jewish, my mother grew up Catholic, and I heard stories, I heard jokes and prejudice against Jewish people growing up, and eventually I got to the point around in my teenage years where I just stopped even acknowledging that I had some Jewish heritage because I didn't want people to prejudge me. And I've seen this. I've met people over the years who've moved to the United States from Central or South America, who've talked about how for years they just tried to pass. They didn't want people to know they were a native Spanish speaker or where they came from south of the border because they were concerned about the prejudices that they would face, maybe for jobs or other things. So they hid those parts of themselves. I've certainly met gay people who have spent years, sometimes torturous years, trying to hide their sexuality or who they love, even from themselves, trying to bury it, to crucify it, to get rid of it. And it's also things like hobbies that we loved to do when we were younger at some point in our lives, such as playing music. Some of us played an instrument or sang, and it just gave us such life and such expansiveness to do it. And then at some point we realized, well, I'm not going to become a professional at this. I'm not one of the greats, one of the best. And so we started to say, I'm going to kind of give it up, and we left it behind. And this is true of painting and poetry and so many different pursuits that we have, that eventually, if we're not going to be one of the greats, we will stop doing it, and we will kind of bury that part of ourselves. It's the same with sometimes just hobbies like model trains or building models or whatever, and we just stop doing it. I did that with I used to be a cartoonist when I was a teenager, and I used to love to draw cartoons, make people laugh and silly stuff, and I stopped doing it for 30 years. And it's only recently in the last year that I've started to do it again. I said, hey, you know what? I'm a minister, and some people will think it's funny or strange for a minister to have that kind of outlet for humor and creativity, and these aren't great, brilliant drawings, but it's given me a lot more of life to reclaim that part of myself. But we also do this with some of us with our tears, with crying, especially men, that when we were young, some of us, many of us, maybe all of us, were teased for crying or shamed for crying. I know for me, I was an athlete playing football and wrestling, and I was certainly teased and learned at a young age to stuff my tears and don't let anyone see me sweat, don't let anyone see me cry. And it became such a way of being that eventually, as I got older and I started to face the world and all that's out there, there were times when I wanted to cry. I felt like tears would actually help me, and I couldn't even access them. And it took me a while to learn how to just sit with my feelings and let the tears flow and let them come, and just how nourishing that is and how healing that is for me, and also for the people around me, for my children, for my wife, and for others, to be able to see me access the fullness of my emotions and my being through tears. It's the same with love. People will, because of a bad relationship, a breakup, a betrayal, or even the death of a loved one, that many of us will say, I'm done with love, I'm not going to love anymore, it hurts too much, I'm not going to put myself out there, I'm not going to open myself up like that anymore. And we stop loving, or we try to bury that part of ourselves, that real part of ourselves, which is our loving nature and the joy that comes through loving others and being loved. And so the everything I'm talking about, I can relate to from my own life as a parent who lost a child many years ago. When that happened, I was in so much pain, and it was because of the love of others and family and some hard work, just working through the grief, that I reclaimed my joy and my sense of love that made me want to have another child and raise another child, and brought me back into the world. So with that in mind, this Easter, my challenge to you, my invitation to you, if you will, is I want you to take this time. Well, it's spring is here, and we're in this pandemic social distancing moment where everything's a little different. There's this sort of suspended animation about our normal way of being. I want you to go back to the tomb where you buried some part or parts of yourself that used to mean a great deal to you. And I want you to roll away the stone, and I want you to look into the tomb and see that the tomb is empty. Those things are not dead. You did not crucify them. They are not gone forever. And in fact, allow them to bring some new life and follow them. Even though they'll be different now than they were before, but seek them out and follow them and find out, what are they inviting you to do now? Who are they inviting you to become? What are they calling you to do in these times and in this part of your life? So that is my Easter message. That is my koan for you. Is, what is your resurrection? And were you there? Go to the tomb where you've buried some things, roll away the stone, and notice the tomb is empty. Happy Easter, happy Passover, happy spring. I love you.